Good morning. Welcome to UUCC, the Unitarian Universalist Church of Canandaigua. We are a group of spiritual freethinkers who gather to celebrate life, build community, and better the world. Wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. I'm Laura Wink, your worship associate for this morning, and the service today will be led by our minister, the Reverend Eileen Casey Campbell. Thank you to everyone on this morning's worship team, including music by Bill Mells and religious education for children 3 and over by Pat and Kaya Mells. If this is your first visit, welcome. We invite you to sign the visitor's book in the entryway, and whether it's your first visit or your 1000th, we are glad that you came. This service is also being live streamed to our YouTube channel. We plan to continue our hybrid worship services so you can join us each week here in person, on Zoom, or later on YouTube. To help us connect better with our friends online, please turn around and give a wave to the camera. And at the end of the service, we will invite our friends on Zoom to turn on their cameras and wave back. We have a few announcements to share. If you have a joy or sorrow to share today, please fill out the card on your chair and place it in the basket when Bill rings the chimes. You can also come forward and drop a pebble in the water if you have a joy or sorrow that you would prefer not to share. This month begins the blooming season. The theme is pluralism. The Spiritual Deepening Packet is available in print on the shelf in the back and online at the link in the weekly email. Next week will be our second Sunday potluck after service. We invite you to bring a dish to share, but even if you forget, you are welcome to stay. We always have enough. The board is working on posting a contract minister position and appointing a search team. On this Sunday and next Sunday, May 11th, we invite people to stay after worship for listening and input sessions about the skills and qualities we're looking for in our future minister. Please try to attend one or both of these sessions. Longtime member Bob Gordon passed away peacefully at home on Sunday, April 13th. Our love and prayers are with Nancy Reed and his family. A celebration of life will be held on Saturday, May 10th at 1 o'clock here at UUCC. Jody Brown is on the nominating committee for the New York State Convention of Universalists, and we are looking to fill 2 positions there, one on the nominating committee and one on the board. If you're interested in either position or would like some information or know someone else who may be interested, please contact Jody by phone or email. And we have a couple other announcements.
I have one announcement, and that is there are some lilac plants that are available if you need a spot in your garden for a lilac plant. And to find them, you just go right down the ramp here and look over the edge, and you'll see them in big pots there. And I believe there are 3 or 4 pots, if I remember correctly from looking. So
There's a few, and there's also a basket that's just about some new saplings.
So you can,
Generated new.
right, just have to wait a little longer. Good, thank you.
Are there any other announcements? Okay. As we prepare to be, whoops, hold on. Hold on.
Sorry, I forgot what I was doing. We had the first announcement about the meeting afterwards, and then just now I remembered there will be a board meeting on Tuesday, the 6th at 7 o'clock. Thank you. I get it together sometimes. I will be there for the board meeting. So if you need information, you can find it in the newsletter. If you have questions or something you want us to discuss, just let me know after the service.
Anything else? Okay. As we prepare to be fully together, I remind us all to silence our phones and devices. We now enter a space of worship. And now is the time to bring forward any joys or sorrows or drop a pebble. Now is the time to light the chalice, and Poppy is going to help. Hi, Poppy. I invite you to join me with me in our chalice lighting words. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together.
Good morning. So this morning's service is a little biology heavy, although you do not have to be a biologist to worship here. Just want to let you know. And so I've been thinking about this one factor in biology of the vestigial trait. Do you know what I mean when I say that? I'm going to explain it anyway. So the vestigial trait, meaning a trait that's passed down to us from our ancestors through many millennia of evolution and isn't useful to us anymore, that we've held on to not because it's useful, but just because it's there. So things for us humans, like the appendix, maybe it seems like biologists are a little bit conflicted about what the purpose of the appendix is, but it's maybe nothing, and you can certainly live without it. And it's probably a vestigial organ, a vestige of a time when we needed it for something or when our ancestors needed it for something, but we don't particularly need it now. Another one is the wrinkles we get on our fingers when we stay in the tub for too long or go swimming all day in the summer. You know what I'm talking about? A vestigial trait of maybe as far back as our reptilian ancestors to grip onto the walls of a stream bed when their digits were all wet and would help them stick. And we don't use that trait anymore, but it's not harmful, so it's there. And I think we have what I would call like cultural vestigial traits. Traits that get passed down in our culture, or little cultural memes, if you will, that get passed on not because they're useful, but just because they're there. So for example, if you are motioning to someone in a car that you want them to roll their window down, what do? You have one of these, right? And I don't know about you, but I haven't had a car that had one of these since the 90s. And sometimes these traits die off, because if you, I'm talking to grown-ups right now, if you grown-ups were going to pretend to take a phone call, say you're in a preschooler's tea party and you pretend to take a phone call, what motion are you going to do with it? You're going to do the banana phone, right? Like, hello. This vestigial trait, I'm sad to say, is not going to be a vestige, because when my kids pretend to take a phone call, they give you the square hand. They go, hello. It's one of these. We don't have these phones anymore. Anyway, I think that we sometimes pass on these vestiges of our past culture. Another one is the handshake, right? We clasp each other to make sure there's no weapons in the other person's sleeve, and that's for sure almost all of the time a vestige of a former culture. But we still do it. And I think in churches, in communities that last generations, sometimes we have vestigial traits. We have things that we do just because we've always done them, and we haven't really thought about whether they're worth doing anymore, whether we should hold on to them, codify them and keep them, or whether there's something we should change or let go. And so one of the things that we're going to do today, and one of the reasons we come to church, is to spend some time thinking about what have we been doing that we definitely want to keep doing. What does shared ministry look like now that we want to hold on to, that really is valuable and useful to us? And what about shared ministry do we want to get rid of? What do we want to let go and move on from? Because if we don't do these periodic thinking throughs in a generational community, sometimes we end up with vestigial traits that are not serving us, that are there just because they're there. And we know when we come to church that we're here for a reason. And so with that on our hearts, I ask you to rise in body or in spirit and sing together our first hymn, number 38 in the gray hymnal, Morning Has Broken. And now it's time for a story. And if you'd like to come and sit up front to hear the story and see the story a little better, you can walk to the front now or any time during the story. You can bring your grown-up with you, or you can come up by yourself and go back to your grown-up whenever you need to. And this morning's story comes from Mayan folklore. It's the story of the crab and the rabbit. And it goes like this. There was a crab and a rabbit, as you might imagine from the title. And they were friends. They worked together to sow a garden in the spring. And mainly what they planted was the thing that they both liked, which was carrots. They planted a whole garden full of carrots, and together they carefully tended the garden. They took turns watering it, weeding it, and keeping the pests who wanted to eat their carrots away from the carrots. And they worked together when it became harvest time to pull up carrot after carrot after carrot. And at the end of their harvest, the rabbit and the crab had this huge pile of carrots. And now here is where they had a little conflict in their friendship, because the rabbit was a bit tricky. And the rabbit tried to play a trick on the crab. And the rabbit, she said, "Crab, why don't you take the green tops of the carrots and I'll take those old roots?" And the crab knew this was a trick right away, right? Because the crab wanted those sweet and juicy orange roots from those carrots and didn't want all that many of the tops. And the crab said, no, I don't think so. Let's just split the pile evenly. And the rabbit said, well, how about this? You take the long, skinny ones, and I'll take the big, fat ones. And the crab knew that this was a trick, and the crab said, I don't think that's fair. How about if we split the pile evenly, friend, the way we split the work? But the rabbit was really insistent on getting what she wanted, which was all of those carrots. And so the crab had to play a trick of his own. And he said, how about if we race to the carrots? We'll go over to that tree over there, and we'll have a race. And the first one to get to the carrots gets to keep the whole pile. And now Rabbit had no idea just how tricky crabs could be when they needed to be. And Rabbit just thought to herself, I'm much faster than a crab. I will definitely get this whole pile of carrots. And so she agreed. They went over to that tree over there, and they got into their starting positions. And Rabbit started to feel a little generous to her friend, and she said, I'll give you 10 paces of a head start. How about? Because she was also very confident that she could beat the crab to the pile of juicy carrots. And the crab said, no need, my friend. In fact, I'll give you 10 paces of a head start. Go ahead. And so the rabbit, feeling a little suspicious at this point, took 10 hops forward, looked back at the crab. The crab gave like a very crabby thumbs up. And they said, ready, set, go. And the rabbit started racing toward the pile. What the rabbit didn't know was that this tricky crab, when the rabbit was out in front of him, grabbed onto her tail with his little pincher. And he sailed along behind the rabbit all the way to the pile of carrots. And when the rabbit got there, before she jumped on the pile, she turned around to see just how far behind that slow, pokey crab was. And when she turned around, the crab let go of her tail and landed right on the pile of carrots. And when the rabbit turned back, there was the crab sitting on that pile of carrots and said, oh, better luck next time, my friend. Looks like I got here first. But because the crab wasn't trying to be tricky, he did divide that pile in half and share half with his friend and take half home, just as they had planned it all along. And this is the end of our story. Thank you for listening. I don't know.
Now is the time in our service to join together in a spiritual practice of generosity. Our gifts of time and money support our church in its work. Each week we like to spotlight a group or a committee and thank them for their gift of time. This week we're going to thank everybody who helped with the highway cleanup last week. Woo woo! 5 and 20 looks a lot better. That is a really long stretch, by the way, for us to do 2.3 miles, right, Danielle? Yeah, we did it. Well done. Thank you for that. I'd also like to do a shout out to the Stewardship Committee. As we can see from the people on the wall in the back, we reached our goal, and woo woo, thank you very much for all the work you've done, especially Pat. 1/4 of our plate collection for the blooming season will go to our service partner, Family Promise of Ontario County. Family Promise unites existing agencies, volunteer organizations, and the faith community in Ontario County to provide a pathway for homeless children and their families to secure reliable housing and self-sufficiency. You can give to this morning's offering by placing a cash or check in the basket or by one of the options on your screen. Please make a note that your gift is intended for today's offering. We now gratefully accept the offering.
Friends, we are a community who promises to hold one another in our joys and in our sorrows. In our celebrations and in our pain, we say to one another, we are with you. And this morning, we hold our joys and sorrows together. We continue to send healing energy and all our good thoughts and prayers to Don Cook as he recuperates at home. We share in the joy of a baby calf born yesterday, early but doing well. And we share joy with Abby and Poppy after a full day at the Beltane Ferry Festival, and so much fun. For these and for all the joys and sorrows left in the silence of our hearts, we will drop one more stone as we promise we are with one another. Will you say it with me? We are with you. And now it is time for religious education. If you're heading to Children's Church downstairs, you can walk to the stairs, walk down the stairs, and meet Miss Kaya there. I invite you now into a time of centering and meditation, followed by some shared silence. So let's first get comfortable in our seats as we remind ourselves that, of course, by shared silence, we always mean the absence of grown-ups talking to one another so that we can listen more closely to the sounds of life, to the sound of the rain dripping outside the windows, to the pitter-patter of our children's feet going down the stairs together, to the breath of the neighbor in the seat beside us, to the workings of our own heart. Let us take a deep breath and let it out with a sigh. Let our shoulders fall away from our ears. Let our feet find the ground beneath us and feel supported by this good earth. Let us turn inward and hear these words from Octavia Butler. Here we are, energy, mass, life, life shaping life, mind shaping mind, God shaping God. Consider, we are born not with purpose, but with potential. All that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. Amen. Last month, my family took a vacation to Maryland, where my mother is from, and where most of her siblings and my cousins still live, and where I used to live as a young adult. And my spouse and kids had never been there, so I got to sort of experience this place that feels like home through brand new eyes when we went together. And my kids had so many questions that I didn't know the answers to, most of them, and some that I'd never even thought to ask. Like, is the Chesapeake Bay Bridge the longest bridge in the world? Google says definitely not, but at 4 miles, it is pretty long. What kind of bird built those giant nests along the highway? After consulting a bird book, a bird I had forgotten existed, the osprey, probably. Why is the Maryland state flag everywhere after having counted 48 of them just between Annapolis and Baltimore? And after consulting our friend Miss Sarah from Baltimore, because the people of Maryland love nothing more than Maryland itself, except maybe crabs. A decent portion of those 48 state flags were in the shape of crabs. And then, of course, why are there so many crabs here? On menus, on bumper stickers, state flags, knickknacks, etc. That one I knew, because there are so many crabs here in the bay. And indeed, it only took one afternoon of them poking around with a net to find one in the bay and then release it. This discovery netted, pun intended, many more questions about crabs. And so we had to do a little bit of a nerdy deep dive on crabs on our way home. And at this point, having maybe noticed the sermon title on the wall or in the newsletter, you might be feeling like, is it senioritis? Like, has she really gone off the deep end? This is a stay with me kind of sermon, but I promise it is going somewhere, theological. Like, I do love a crab cake, but that's not all that this is this morning. Okay, so do you know about convergent evolution, like as a principle? It's fine if you don't, I'm going to explain it anyway, the best I can, because you don't have to have a biology degree or a theology degree to worship here. It's when different species on different branches of the tree of life evolve similar traits separately. Like, for example, our arms brachiate, do this thing, where we could hang from a pull-up bar or a tree branch, and chimpanzee arms brachiate because we both inherited that trait from a common ancestor. But our eyes focus like a camera lens, and octopus eyes do the same, not because we inherited that trait from a common ancestor, but because that trait evolved separately twice, that we know of. The hydrodynamic body shape of marine mammals, like dolphins and whales, and the similar shape of a fish, as another example, evolved convergently. When a trait works well in a particular environment, sometimes it shows up more than once. And there's one trait, which is really a whole set of traits constituting a recognizable body shape that nature loves to create over and over, it seems. So much so that there is a term for it in biology, carcinization, though I think the better term would have been crabification. Because yes, you guessed it, it is the crab. The body shape or morphology of a crab has evolved at least 5 separate times in the tree of life. Not just like a few crabby traits, but the whole structure of a crab. 10 limbs, 2 of the pinchy kind at the front, a flat, round, broadish body, eye stalks, a shell that overlaps in a way that I won't pretend to understand, but is different from lobsters and shrimp, and the ability to live on land or in water for extended periods. And 5 times might not seem like that many times for a body shape to convergently evolve, but let's consider that flight has only evolved thrice, and not nearly as convergently as the crab body. A bird and a bat and a butterfly all have body structures that we call wings, but you wouldn't mistake one for the other. All these crabs, you'd look at any one of them and go, yeah, that guy's a crab. And so we have learned that I do not have a biology degree, but I do have a couple theology ones. And so I was like, there are some spiritual questions here. This is my immediate response to learning about the crabification of life. For example, why does the universe love crabs? Why is it that the spirit of life longs to be a crab, it seems? The creation story in Genesis 1, stay with me, it is going somewhere. Which, as many of you know, is one of my top 3 favorite Bible stories. This story features a world born out of the body of a crustacean. Likely not how you heard it told in Sunday school, even a UU Sunday school, if that's where you were. But I'm not kidding, even a little bit. And it probably was something more like a clam or a mussel than a crab. But knowing what we know about life's desire to be crab, from now on, that is how I will be picturing it. So the story of creation in Genesis 1, the 7-day creation story that probably most of us did hear some version of in our childhoods. That was lifted, almost word for word, from an ancient Babylonian myth that went something like this. In the beginning, the world was a sea of chaos. These waters of the deep, as we translate them in Genesis, contained and were also somehow made from the body of a primal, godlike being named Tiamat. Her body, across different literature and myth, is described as being a sea creature and also the sea itself. She's said to have, at different times, a tail, a head, and a double-sided shell. We actually get the word chaos from the name of the later Greek version of this same deity, Chaos. In Babylonian mythology, Tiamat had birthed the first gods, who in turn made other beings, and so on, including one named Marduk, a more human-shaped god, or maybe a godlike human, depending on who you ask. This is thousands of years old. But here's where we get to where Genesis begins. The gods began to battle with one another in the primordial waters, and this young god or person, Marduk, rose in power in these battles. He captured Tiamat, the mother of all, whose body was the world. The word in Hebrew here is Tehomat, which is almost always translated into English as the waters of the deep, but is just her name. And he sliced her in half. Remember the clam or crab shell shape we're picturing, right? He cast the top shell upward to become the dome of the sky, and the bottom shell below to become the dome of the earth. And over the course of a week, he set the sun and moon and stars in the top dome and formed land filled with plants and animals in the lower dome. And then, triumphant in battle and satisfied with creation, he rested for a day. Almost word for word, with quite a few editorial translations, this is how Genesis' 7-day creation plays out. Except that Marduk is an unnamed, though plural, divine force, and those authors added the repeating chorus after each act of creation. The gods said it was good, putting a totally different spin on the story. A world created by this evil demigod in the Babylonian myth out of the very body of chaos became a creation of joy in the Hebrew version, of goodness. The editorial choice that got made in writing down Genesis was to insist that creation is, yes, still the stuff of chaos, but it is good. And let us repeat it in case you didn't hear it. Every day of the story, it is good, it is good, it is good. 7 times over. And if we could return to the crabification of it all, the best guess biologists have about why the heck life keeps veering crabward is that the universe is chaotic. The world is disorderly, always changing, and the crab is ready. The crab meets the chaos of nature like the authors of Genesis. It is good. It's good. I'm good, you guys. In all seriousness, it's apparently a morphology very good at not just surviving a particular environment, but adapting to a changing one. It allows for movement in all directions, including climbing and burrowing. Life on water or on land, changes in temperature and weather. It's great at being a predator, equally great at not being prey. And when an ecosystem is hit with big changes, lots of times populations die or thin out or move out, but crabs tend to survive. Our centering words this morning came from one of my favorite authors, Octavia Butler. She wrote some of the most prophetic science fiction I have ever read in the subgenre of Afrofuturism, which she basically created. And her Parable series, which was written in the early 90s but set in our current time, includes a fictional religion that is based in and heavily influential on real-world process theology. She sums that up within a work of fiction, these deep theological concepts, wisdom like, you are creation before creation begetting creation. You are change, God is change. And the words we heard in our meditation today, her most famous doctrine, we are born not with purpose, but with potential. All that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change, so God is change. This is a great summary of modern process theology if you're thinking, like, what the heck is that? Because you don't need to be a biologist or a theologian to be here. So process theology is a way of thinking about divinity not as omnipotent or personified or static, no rock of ages, if you will, but more like a force in the world. Less of a being, more of a becoming. Or as Octavia put it much more eloquently, God is change. And if God is change, the ever-flowing force of creation, of becoming, then we can be part of God when we are part of change. We can transform God when we take part in transformation. This is what process theology poses. And that becoming, that creative force, takes place chaotically. The substance of creation, of all change, of God, is chaos. One of my most beloved process theologians, Catherine Keller, in writing about Genesis 1 and the Babylonian creation myth it comes from, says that all creation happens on the edge of chaos. The Tahomic edge, she calls it, naming it after that sea creature goddess whose body was the material of the world. There is this sense in all the best creation stories that creation, that creativity takes place on the precipice of mystery and the unknown. The mess of the artist's workshop is the mess of genes imperfectly lining up to create new ways of being life, is the mess of nebulae where stars are born, is the mess of joy and sorrow that occupy the ever-changing, always becoming human heart. And maybe you're starting to see how we're coming back to the crabs, right? If God is the chaos of change, then God loves crabs because crabs love chaos, right? That life longs to be a crab because the substance of life is chaos, and when it comes to chaos, the crabs have decided it is good. They are all in. And we're still following this very weird train of thought, right? The crabs, all 5 branches of them in the family tree of life, are both an actual example and a metaphor for how the prevailing force in the world, the one constant in the web of life, is change. And it isn't the strongest traits that survive. It's the most creative, the most adaptive. Those that go with the flow of chaos, with the spirit of change that we maybe choose to call God. If God is change, then change loves crabs, loves adapters, favors those who innovate, who join in the great becoming. Here is where things get a little hard for us. Because when our religions align with power concentrated in the hands of the few, we would rather imagine a God who orders the universe, right? Who has personhood and will, who makes things happen. And even when we reject a personified being of a God as unreasonable, when we're aligned with power, we tend to just trade in that God for a predictable universe, for law and order of some sort. When we're aligned with power, we want gods that reflect that back. But the God of liberation, the God of crabs, if you will, is more like the power of a stream carving out a canyon over eons, and the power of the earth seeding itself year after year to the water. The God that is not a being, but is a becoming, in this understanding has to be a God of liberation. And liberation has to look like change, chaos, disorder. And we can be crabs in the tide of freedom for all, or we can be washed away by it while we desperately scrabble for something less chaotic than liberation. Catherine Keller writes that the divine order always looks like chaos to power. Power always favors order over disorder. But co-creating liberation means subverting the order of empire. This is why the authors of Genesis, who were enslaved by a different empire, repeat, like the chorus of a song, that what appears to be chaos and disorder to their oppressors is good. It is good, it is good, it is good, they say over and over. Those authors knew that we need a reminder, we humans need a reminder, especially if we are the ones power is selling itself to over and over and over. It is good. Chaos is good. The change is good. This is what liberation looks like. UU theologian Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams put it this way: the work over time, with due respect to Gandhi, is not to be the change we wish to see in the world, but instead to let ourselves be truly transformed. And then, by our presence and example, to become the catalyst of transformation for others, and through them, eventually, the transformation of the world. Liberation requires of us a willingness to be co-creators of change, which is to say, a willingness to be changed. Maybe not into crabs, literally, but I wouldn't rule it out. May we be so willing. Amen.
I am resilient. I trust the movement. Negate the chaos. Uplift the negative. I'll show up at the table again and again and again. I'll close my mouth and learn to listen. These times are poignant, the winds have shifted. It's all we can do to stay uplifted. Pipelines through backyards, howling out front. Yeah, I got my clue, but truth is what I want. Be aligned and on point, power and to the peaceful, prayers to the waters, women at the center, all lessons open to
Let's close with these words, heard one more time from Octavia Butler. All that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change. And so, God is change. And would you rise in body or in spirit and sing together our closing hymn number 203 in the gray hymnal, All Creatures. And we'll sing just the first 3 verses.
If you're joining us on Zoom, now is the time to turn on your camera on if you'd like to wave goodbye. Please join me in our words for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.